We'll talk a minute about a couple of other things, but there have been some questions that I want to jump into, because some of them that have come up. So yeah, one of the questions that came in was, yes, can vitamin A deficiency cause Hashimoto's? There's no evidence that I've seen in medical literature where vitamin A directly causes Hashimoto's, but vitamin A deficiency can cause your thyroid that you do have, your thyroid hormone that you do have, to not properly function. And more specifically, Hashimoto's can contribute to vitamin A deficiency. And so it becomes a double-edged sword. If you've got a diagnosis of Hashimoto's and you're low thyroid, and thyroid is required for you to convert carotenoids into vitamin A, and maybe you're, again, going back to if you're a vegetarian and you're not eating, or vegan and you're not eating animal products, but you have a thyroid, an autoimmune thyroid problem, this is where you can get into trouble. So the thyroid deficiency can create a vitamin A deficiency. The vitamin A deficiency can inhibit the way that your thyroid function is able to do its job, or the way that your thyroid hormone is able to communicate to your DNA. So that's the connection, but not a connection that I know of, or not a connection in the research to date that shows that vitamin A deficiency directly causes Hashimoto's. Now, differentiating Hashimoto's from low thyroid, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease of the thyroid, whereas a hypothyroid without Hashimoto's, you can have a nutritional hypothyroidism, but the two are not the same thing. They're different causes. Is there harm in adding vitamin A supplementation without testing? Not at lower doses, Tiffany, not at lower doses. You can supplement, but I just wouldn't get up above 12,500 a day. Like, I just wouldn't attempt doing that without adequate testing or having somebody monitor your levels. It just would be a better idea to not. Wow, hypothyroid treated with 4 different types of thyroid medication, up and down on doses 5 to 6 years. Finally, off them all. The side effects were horrendous. I never had my vitamin A checked. So that's what I was asking. Like, how many of you been on that roller coaster ride where the doctor never even knew about this, didn't even understand the nutritional biochemistry behind what makes your thyroid work? That's the scary part. It's that, I don't know, in my humble opinion, if a doctor's going to have the power to prescribe strong medications, they should understand the underlying biochemistry of what makes those medicines work or not work. And they should be monitoring those things as well. They should be comprehensive in their approach of leaky gut, or can it cause a leaky gut? It maybe is a better way to look at that. It can. Low vitamin A levels can definitely create or cause an intestinal permeability, because again, if your gut is damaged from years of inflammation, whether it's food allergies, whether it's gluten, whether it's poisons and chemicals that you've been eating that you didn't know were poisons and chemicals, like corn syrup or genetically modified foods or pesticides or whatever, but if you don't have the raw ingredients to repair that gut lining, to regenerate the epithelial tissue, then you could have a perpetual leaky gut problem on your hands. So, again, vitamin A can be a cause of a perpetuated leaky gut. Key, though, is don't just assume it and high dose it. Like, really test it. Get somebody to test it for you, so that you're not just taking it. Is there? Let's see. Not sure this was asked. What about after radiation? So that brings me into kind of my next series of what I want you to understand about vitamin A. I'm going to have to make some room on the board here. Let's see here. So some of the other functions of vitamin A that are super critical that you want to understand. The question's coming in about radiation. So I assume you mean radiation treatment as a result of some type of cancer. Now, if I'm assuming wrong, you can type that in and say, no, that's not what I mean. But that's typically what people mean when they say radiation. So let's talk about some of the other functions of vitamin A, critical functions. You've all heard probably, well, you've heard me. If you've been tuning into the show for any length of time, you've heard me talk about vitamin D a number of times and its role as playing a role in fighting cancer and preventing cancer. There are 19 forms of terminal cancer that vitamin D deficiency can cause. What about vitamin A? So we look at a couple of functions of vitamin A. One is in growth, and the other is in something called differentiation. And what am I referring to? We're talking about cells. So cell growth and cell differentiation. What does that mean? Cell growth just means healing and repair and new growth. And so if you're like a child or a baby or a growing young person with vitamin A deficiency, this can be a major issue is that you can be under the curve. Vitamin A deficiency can stunt growth. It can create birth defects, cleft palate deformities among some of them. It can create a lot of different types of problems in a growing baby or a growing fetus, but also in a growing born child. Differentiation refers to how your cells differentiate. So some cells go on. How does a cell know to become a bone cell, for example? Or how does a cell know to become a lung cell? How does a cell know to become a heart cell? Well, in part, it's because of vitamin A. Vitamin A helps cellular differentiation. It helps cells determine what kind of cells they're supposed to be and that they're going to be during development. So cell differentiation is very, very important. Now, this is also, though, important later on in adult life because growth and differentiation has to do with cancer. Some cells actually, when they come out, are not being properly differentiated and not being properly regulated. And so what happens is you can develop malformities or malformed cells, or you can develop the wrong kind of cell in the wrong location. And that's what we call cancer. When you have, if you've ever heard the term metastasis, where let's say like a liver cancer, for example, or like a bone cancer, for example, metabolizes to the lung, or bone cancer metabolizes or metastasizes. I didn't mean to use the word metabolize. I meant to use the word metastasize, meaning it travels to a different organ or a different location. And that's where tumors can grow in other organs and other locations and become really, really dangerous. And vitamin A helps to prevent that. So we need vitamin A for cell growth, cell differentiation, and that includes differentiation away from cancer types of cells. We also need vitamin A for one other process that's very important as it relates to cancer, and I'm going to draw it in red over here. It's called apoptosis. And apoptosis is another name for that, is programmed cell death. So all of your cells come with a built-in destruct sequence switch. And vitamin A is important for activating that self-destruct sequence. And so if a cell, for example, differentiates incorrectly, then the internal switch should be the kill switch that says, oh, we don't want that to turn into cancer, so let's just basically auto-destruct ourselves and not create a problem for the rest of the body. That process requires vitamin A. So cell differentiation, cell growth, and cellular apoptosis or programmed cell death all require vitamin A to regulate. So the question going back to what about low vitamin A after radiation? Well, yeah, I mean, when you're destroying tissue that you're changing, those cells that you're changing and destroying are going to require vitamin A for regeneration. But more importantly, one of the side effects long-term of radiation therapies, even concentrated doses of radiation in small areas, is developing cancer in the area where the radiation was performed. It's one of the long-term consequences and side effects, again, of radiation. So yes, vitamin A deficiency can contribute to the development of cancers in that regard. So hopefully that answers your question. Oh man, Marie says, thanks for your response. My endocrinologist got furious at me for asking vitamin deficiency questions. Look, if you've got a doctor that doesn't know nutrition and they get mad at you because you poked a hole in their armor, and it really, I mean, they should just own it. Like, when somebody asks me a question I don't know the answer to, I just own it. Look, I don't know the answer to everything. I'm not, I know a lot, and I have a really long line of experience, and I'm very well read and very well experienced in the clinic, but I get stumped. All of us do. And so that shouldn't be an ego issue for your doctor. And if your doctor gets mad at you, it's time to reevaluate the relationship, because what he's really doing, he's just projecting his own anger at himself for not being adequate onto you. That's really what that's more in line with. Either that, or he's just got problems that he would get mad at you for having a question. Like, doctor means teacher. Teacher should be always willing to entertain questions and to make sure that you're comfortable with the medicines or the different types of treatments or protocols that they're going to put you on. Okay. Vitamin A, is it best to take on an empty stomach with other supplements? Great question. It's best to take with fat. Okay, it's best to take with fat because it is a fat. So when you eat a bolus of fat, you're stimulating your liver and your gallbladder to release bile into your intestine to start micellizing or to start emulsifying that fat so you can better absorb it. So it's better to take with a bolus of fat. Like the vitamin A I formulate is actually pre-emulsified. So it's a dropper, but it's fat emulsified. So when you take it, even if your gut's completely broken, it still gets absorbed. On that note, a couple of other points that I didn't talk about that I just should. One is once you absorb the vitamin A, so we talked earlier about absorbing that vitamin A. So once it's absorbed, it has to be carried. It has a carrier protein. It needs a carrier protein. In other words, vitamin A just doesn't magically absorb into your bloodstream and go where it wants to go and get to your eye, get to your skin, get to your other tissues. It's got a carrier protein called RBP. Now, what does that stand for? That stands for retinol binding protein. Retinol binding protein is made out of zinc. So a lot of times what happens is a person who has vitamin A deficiency has a vitamin A deficiency because they're zinc deficient. And so they have enough vitamin A, they just don't have any way to deliver the vitamin A to their tissues. So, and that, remember the taxi cab or the shuttle for vitamin A is retinol binding protein, which is a zinc-based protein. So a zinc deficiency commonly accompanied by a vitamin A deficiency. So if you are zinc deficient, it's very possible that you have, or that you can or are at risk for developing a vitamin A deficiency. Now, we did a show on zinc a few weeks ago, and we talked about zinc, more than 200 functions in the human body. Retinol binding protein is one of them. Very, very important and very, very critical to help you deliver vitamin A to the right tissues. Pastured egg yolks, liverwurst, are they good? Pastured egg yolks are fantastic. If you've got access, we've got chickens at home, and there's nothing better than a fresh farm-raised egg yolk. The carotenoid and the vitamin A, but really the carotenoids from the bird eating all the grass and pasture-raised is extremely rich. That's why the yolks are so orange and really, really vivid yellow, because of all that natural grazing that the animals do. Liverwurst depends on how it's processed. So look at other added ingredient in that liverwurst. Look at its process. Look what kind of an animal it is coming from. If the liver is actually coming from a free range type of animal in good living quarters, good living conditions, and probably be okay. Taking a tablespoon of olive oil a day is good, and take with vitamin A. Yeah, you could mix that olive oil, or you could just eat an avocado, right? And then take your vitamin A with that avocado. Or if you really just want to eat some liver, you could do that too. Let's see. Can vitamin A cause, Jackie wants to know, can vitamin A cause liver issues at high doses? It can. Vitamin A can cause a few different problems at super high doses for super long periods of time. And that's why, again, although I'm not worried about its toxicity unless somebody's mega dosing on it, I don't really recommend hyper mega dosing with vitamin A without being monitored. It's not like vitamin D. Vitamin D we could say it has a much higher safety profile taking high doses for long term than vitamin A does. But vitamin A can cause liver problems. Vitamin A toxicity. Vitamin A toxicity can cause bone problems. Vitamin A toxicity can also create tumors. So you got to be careful with too much. Let's see. Deborah says, with the provitamin A vegetables, I was told to remove the skin and seeds from peppers, tomatoes, etc. because of the lectins. Deborah, lectins in most foods that you eat, and some of you are lectin sensitive, and so it depends on why you were told that. So, for example, I eat the skins of those all the time, and the lectins, because my gut is healthy, because my immune system is strong, skin them. But as a general rule of thumb, you also want to get where a lot of that rich carotenoid is. You want to be able to get to that. Let's see. Was told water miscible vitamin A was better and would not store in fat. All vitamin A has the potential to store in fat. Look, once you absorb it, it's generally in the form of retinol, and it can convert into retinol esters, and it can convert into retinoic acid, and it all has the potential to get in your fat either way. So there's not necessarily one version that's less toxic because of its water-soluble micellized form versus not. Let's see here. What if you don't have a gallbladder? So if you don't have a gallbladder, there are a number of different options. You can get you a good supplement with ox bile in it and take that before you eat your higher fat based meals, and that would help to support your digestion. So that's one aspect that you could do. Now, some people don't have a gallbladder and still digest fat. Okay, remember, you still have a liver, you still make bile. You just don't have the gallbladder to squeeze the bile into your small intestine at the right time. Remember, that's under hormonal influence. When you have when food hits your small intestine, it sends a message to your through your pancreas to stimulate something called cholecystokinin, and that's a hormone that stimulates the gallbladder to contract and release bile. So you just kind of lose that timing effect, but you still do have bile. So the key thing there is, if you don't have a gallbladder and you have a lot of fat showing up in your stool, like if your stool is really clay or tanned colored and it's not dark brown, that's a sign of fat malabsorption. And so that might be a problem for you. So again, that's where you would work. My advice really is to work with a good functional doc who understands nutrition and kind of dial in whether or not you absolutely need that or whether you don't. But if you get your fat-soluble vitamins, and remember, there's 4 fat-soluble vitamins: vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. Now, there's also what we don't call them vitamins, but they're essential fats. The omega-3 is an essential fat as well. So if you don't have a gallbladder, those are the risks that you run. In my experience, about 5 to 7 years after cholecystectomy or after gallbladder surgery, where you've had a gallbladder removed, it takes about that long to start seeing fat-soluble vitamin deficiencies really start to develop. So it can take some time for those to develop as well. Can one get protein by supplementing with amino acids? I mean, so amino acids are the building blocks to protein. So the simple answer to that is yes. Remember, what your body does when you eat protein, like an animal meat, you're basically, the job of your gut and your stomach is to break that protein down into tri, di, and monopeptides. Basically, amino acid is what a monopeptide is. It's a single amino acid. So when you connect 2 amino acids together, that's called a dipeptide. When you connect 3 amino acids together, that's called a tripeptide. When you connect about 10 amino acids together, that's called a polypeptide. And when you get into the hundreds of amino acids, you call that a protein. So your body's just taking that protein and rendering it down and breaking it down through biochemical processes to get to the individual amino acids. So if you take amino acids, yes, that's going to help add amino acids to your protein pool within your body and supply that of what you need. But it also depends on what amino acids that you're taking. So if you're taking, for example, there's different formulations. There's 22 different amino acids. 10 of them are essential. Some people will take like branch chain amino acids, for example, or BCAAs, which consists of 3 essential amino acids: leucine, isoleucine, and valine. Some people will take glutamine as an amino acid, but remember, there's a lot more than just those 4 amino acids. So it depends on what you're taking. Let's see. The active form of vitamin A refers to retinol, which is the form of vitamin A. Once it gets into your body, it's really the active form. It's the form that your eyes use. It's the form that is basically that helps to form those retinoic acid receptors and activate them as well. I think I answered that question already. Can I drink high dosage vitamin C powder for detox once a week? That's not really a vitamin A question, Kathy, but what does high dosage mean? That's a tough one, because high dose to you may not mean what it means to me. But generally speaking, vitamin C is safe at higher doses. How would be the best way to consume liver? Well, Lori, the best way to consume liver is a way in which you enjoy it. So, so there's not like how do you like it? How do you want to prep it? Some people pate it. Some people, put a little oil in the pan and fry it up, pan fry it. Some people bake it. I mean, some people kind of eviscerate or kind of mash it in and just add it to other meats. Like, it's one way to hide it from your kids is take small amounts of liver and mix it in with the ground beef or mix it in with some soup so that they're not getting that texture wall, hitting that texture wall and saying, gross, I don't like the way it feels in my mouth. But I mean, there are a number of ways to consume it. It just depends on what your taste buds enjoy. So there's Sandra saying, fry the liver, fry some bacon, fry the onion in the fat, and when it's cooked, toss in the calf liver. Yummy. Yeah, okay, that's a good one. That's a good way. Is there gluten in sprouted flour? Yes, there is gluten in sprouted flour. Debbie says, my Boston Terrier has a thyroid cancer. He had a huge tumor that's growing. Could vitamin A help him? Is vitamin A safe for dogs? Full disclosure here, Debbie, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not the expert on dogs and cats in that regard. I would maybe field that question to the veterinarian and find out a little bit more about whether or not that's a possibility. Let's see. I have Hashimoto's and take vitamin A. My TPO antibodies have just gone from 2,000 to 695 in 6 months after eliminating coffee. You must have watched my video on coffee. That's awesome. Love that. Many other diet changes over several years had no effect on antibodies. Let's see. Is vitamin A higher in raw eggs versus cooked eggs? The carotenoids are pretty stable even when you cook them, so you're still going to get the benefit even with a cooked egg. Would a vitamin A deficiency contribute to rheumatoid arthritis and autoimmune disease or autoimmune issues? So interesting you bring up rheumatoid arthritis, because really there's not a lot of research that says that vitamin A directly causes autoimmune disease, although we could theorize that out and we could study it and we could research it, although I don't think anyone's done that. But there is now evidence showing that people that have an autoimmune rheumatoid diagnosis, so like rheumatoid arthritis or other forms of rheumatological disease, who are taking methotrexate do better with vitamin A, meaning if they don't have vitamin A, then the methotrexate damages their gut lining more aggressively over time, creating more side effects and more problems. So there's some studies showing that methotrexate usage in part can be mitigated. The side effects can be better mitigated by the use of vitamin A. There's also some really great research coming out on how vaccines, and whether you're on the fence about vaccines or whether you're for them or whether you're against them, I'm not going to talk about that tonight, but there's research showing that people with vitamin A boosters tend to tolerate the vaccines better. And I'm actually compiling a lot of that research now, because one of the top questions we get is, what can I do if I am forced to vaccinate? What can I do and how can I protect myself? So pay attention. Make sure if you haven't on it, because I just want to be accurate for those of you who are asking that question and really truly don't have an option to not vaccinate. So. Okay. Let's see here. Do you have should you test children for vitamin deficiencies? Diane wants to know. Yes, you should test children, especially sick children. Now, if your children are healthy, running around doing fantastic, do you need to stick a needle in them and draw their blood? Depends. I mean, probably not. I don't know that I would necessarily do that unless they're not growing on time and they're not hitting their growth spurts, or they have maybe some type of other kind of, maybe not diseases, but maybe what are early onset health issues that you suspect could be helped by aiding their nutrition or understanding what their nutrition looks like better. Let's see. Do you have advice for taking vitamin A pre-post vaccination or enhanced recovery? I think I just answered you, though. Pay attention. If you don't subscribe, hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to actually probably do a whole show on that whole topic. Let's see here. Rachel says, love Mondays. Me too, Rachel. Glad that you love them. Glad you like spending time here with us on the show. Sela says, Dr. Osborne, can you go over silent acid reflux sometime? So yeah, and actually, Sela, just if you want some help to kind of look at some things now, I've got a couple of articles and videos on intestinal problems, one particularly on gastric reflux on Gluten Free Society. If you visit my foundation in Gluten Free Society and type in GERD in the search engine on Gluten Free Society's website, you can pull that article up. Let's see here. Just had fried liver this morning. My 2-year-old loves it. Yeah, and so that's the thing, right? If you start your kids on organ meat when they're young, like, they may or may not like it, but if they like it, you'll never have to, as adults, have to get them over that whole like mental, like gross texture thing that a lot of kids really struggle with, because, we're actually one of the, while arguably we're really the only generation in America, in America I'm speaking about, we're the only generation that's really left organ meat, and just kind of deviated away from it. If you look at most other cultures and around the world, organ meat is a pretty important food that they eat because it's so nutritionally dense. As a matter of fact, there's some science that would argue that organ meat, pound for pound, is the most nutrient dense. It's more nutrient dense than vegetables and fruits. So, not eating it could potentially be, you could be potentially cutting out some really valid sources of nutrients from the diet. Is it critical that the liver is organic? I love it, but it's hard to find. Yes, it is. It really is. I mean, unless you know the farmer, and the farmer is like a small farmer and they don't spray, and it's not necessarily certified organic, but he's not using any chemicals or sprays or chemical genetically modified foods or feeds or any of that kind of stuff. You know, if you have a relationship with the farmer and you can get your meat in that way, that's a great way to do it. But, you know, if it's otherwise, if you're buying it in the main store, I would be very hesitant about buying it, because remember, the liver's job, part of what the liver does is it takes very, very dangerous toxins and makes them even more dangerous, but turns them water soluble so that your kidneys can excrete them. And so if you're eating an animal that's being fed incorrectly or being loaded with pesticide or other chemicals, that's what you're getting when you're getting their liver. Ann wants to know the cleanest prep kit for a colonoscopy. I use Detox C. I just have, when people ask me what's an alternative, can I clean my gut out with something other than the corn syrup drink or the drink that the doc gives me? You can use vitamin C. Vitamin C as a gut cleanse before colonoscopy. Although get with your doctor to make sure that's okay with him before you attempt to do it. Chris, is it true the liver doesn't catch all the toxins? It's not about catching all the toxins. Remember, as anytime you eat, as your food is broken down, it has to go through what's called the portal circulation, which is a specialized path of blood flow that goes to the liver first, because your liver gets first catch. It gets first knock at a lot of the things that have potentially come through from the diet or from the food that you ate. So the liver gets the first go at it. But if the liver's overwhelmed, then what can end up happening is it can, this stuff can not properly be detoxified and excreted, and it can start showing up in the kidney, and it can start showing up in the skin. And a lot of people with poor liver function end up developing diseases like inflammatory skin diseases like eczema, as a result of an unhealthy liver. So it's true that the liver doesn't catch all the toxins if it's overwhelmed. Just like you, if I put a 500-pound sandbag in your arms and you were a strong guy and you could handle the 500, but let's say we added on another 200 and another 3, would you be able to catch it all? At a certain point, it would break you. And if your liver is overwhelmed and you push it too hard, then it can't catch them all. It starts to falter. Is chicken liver okay? Yeah. So Barbara wants to know, she'd never been able to get past beef liver. Is chicken liver okay? Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Is the kids ultra gluten free good for a 2-year-old? I don't know what you mean, Jenny. When you say kids ultra gluten free, you're talking about my kids multivitamin formulation? If you are, yes, it's okay for a 2-year-old. 1 to 2 of the chewables a day should suffice for a 2-year-old. Let's see here. Would vitamin A deficiency, I answered that. Lori, if one has keratosis pilaris or hyperfollicular keratosis, how long would it take to see a difference in the skin once supplementing with vitamin A? It depends, Lori, because there are other causes for that particular problem. I mean, it can be inflammatory foods in the diet, vitamin C deficiency, zinc deficiency, copper deficiency, vitamin A deficiency. So there are a lot of things that can cause it. So to me, instead of just, supplementing with vitamin A indefinitely to see if it goes away, ask your doc or get with your doc to test those things to see what's going to work uniquely for you. And, if you don't have a doc and you're looking for somebody to help you with that, just call my office. We do phone consultations, among other things. Should liver be well done or pink in the center? Depends on your flavor, depends on your taste. It's in my opinion, it's best to cook it all the way, because again, depending on the animal, the parasites exist for a reason, and parasites can get into livers. You got things like liver flukes, etc. So it's better to cook it all the way through. Goiter, too much or too little? Don't know what you mean, Jackie. When you say goiter, too much, too little, are you talking about vitamin A, too much vitamin A or too little vitamin A? Vitamin A deficiency doesn't necessarily cause goiter. For most people, nutritional goiter causes are things like iodine deficiency or vitamin C or vitamin B2 deficiency can cause it. Tyrosine deficiency, protein deficiency can cause it. Magnesium, vitamin B12 deficiency can cause goiter, but I've never seen or experienced anybody developing goiter over a vitamin A deficit. Okay. Is there any correlation of vitamin A deficiency to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? Yes, there is. So vitamin A, the liver needs vitamin A to function. It's part of how we package fats properly. The biggest correlation in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease I've ever seen, though, are a handful of things. One is gluten sensitivity. Very, very common. Actually, almost always the case in my experience, Cheryl. So if you haven't read No Grain, No Pain, like pick your copy up and read it and start following the 30-day diet of No Grain, No Pain if you're struggling with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and don't know why. Nutritional deficiencies, though, vitamin A, choline deficiency, inositol deficiency, vitamin B3 deficiency, those are all potentials. Vitamin B12 deficiency, all those can contribute to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease as well. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, so Chris chiming back in. So industrial cows for sure have an overwhelmed liver. That would be my thought. I mean, maybe they don't. Maybe some of them don't, but I'm not going to take that risk with my health from these industrial mass production farms. If you've ever, wondered about whether or not grass-fed beef was the right move to make, a nice field trip you could take is just go visit one of these industrial feedlots. You'll visit them and you'll never want to eat the meat again. I mean, it's horrific the way these animals are treated and the way these animals are confined, in their own poop, in their own urine, with no space to run, with high levels of stress. Like imagine how well you would do if we pinned you in a room full of 50 other people and nobody had a bathroom and everybody just basically did their business all over each other. Like how effectively healthy would you all be? You wouldn't be. So that's kind of what happens in these feedlots. You don't want to eat that for your food. That's just not a healthy way to go. Let's see. All right, I answered that one already. I think we're solid. I think we got them all, and this is like a record. We got all the questions before. We're right at time here. So, okay. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that bell, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell below the video. And if you don't already or haven't already, go pick up a copy of No Grain, No Pain. You can pick that up at Barnes & Noble. You can pick that up on Amazon. And additionally, make sure you come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org, where when you sign up for our newsletter, we're world's number one gluten-free newsletter with 250,000 subscribers, and want you to come visit us and subscribe so that we can send you a free gluten-free survival guide. It's not your baseline going gluten-free type of stuff. It's really high-level thinking, high strategy for you to really recapture your health. So come pick that up, no charge to you. Just come by and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get valuable content. You'll also get reminders when we do these Monday Night Lives. So it was great spending an hour with you tonight. Wishing you excellent health. We'll see you same time next week for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.